Tech companies are deleting evidence of war crimes. Algorithms that take down terrorist videos could hamstring efforts to bring human rights abusers to justice. And this story goes on. If grisly images stay up on Facebook or YouTube long enough, self-appointed detectives around the world sometimes use them to reconstruct a crime scene. In July of 2017, a video capturing the execution of 18 people appeared on Facebook. The clip opened with half a dozen armed men presiding over several rows of detainees. Dressed in bright orange jumpsuits and black hoods, the captives knelt in the gravel, hands tied behind their back. They never saw what was coming. The gunmen raised their weapons and fired, and the first row of victims crumbled to earth. The executors repeated this act 4 times, following orders of a confident young man dressed in a black cap and camouflage trousers. And if you slowed the video down frame by frame, you could see that his black t-shirt bore the logo of Al-Sainqua Brigade, an elite unit of the Libyan National Army. This was clue number 1. This happened in Libya. Facebook took down the bloody video, whose source has yet to be conclusively determined, shortly after it surfaced. But it existed online long enough for copies to spread to other social networking sites. Independently, human rights activists, prosecutors, and other internet users in multiple countries scoured the clip for clues and soon established that the killings had occurred on the outskirts of Benghazi. The ringleader, these investigators concluded, was an al-Sainqua commander. Within a month, the International Criminal Court had charged this commander with the murder of 33 people in 7 separate incidents from June 2016 to July 2017, and killings that landed on Facebook. In an International Criminal Court arrest warrant, prosecutors relied heavily on digital evidence collected from social media sites. But this commander has so far evaded justice. But human rights activists still hail the case as a breakthrough for a powerful new tool: online open source investigations. Even in no-go combat zones, war crimes and other abuses often leave behind an information trail. By piecing together information that becomes publicly accessible on social media and other sites, internet users can hold the perpetrators accountable. That is, unless algorithms developed by the tech giants expunge the evidence first. Shortly after this arrest warrant was issued for this commander, a Syrian open source investigator in Berlin noticed something that distressed him. User-generated videos depicting first-hand accounts from the war in Syria were vanishing from the internet by the thousands. This man called Katlib, Hadi al-Katlib, is the founder of the Syrian Archive, a collective of activists that since 2014 has been scouring for digital materials posted by people left behind in Syria's war zone. And the Syrian Archive's aim is to build a kind of visual documentation relating to human rights violations and other crimes committed by all sides during the 8-year conflict. In the late summer of 2017, Katib and his colleagues were systematically building a case against the regime of Bashar al-Assad in much the same way. They had massed scores and scores of citizens' accounts, including videos and photos that purportedly showed Assad's targeting hospitals and medical clinics in bombing campaigns. We were collecting, archiving, and geolocating evidence using all sorts of verification techniques. Then one day we noticed that all the videos we had been through, all of a sudden, all of them were gone. It wasn't a sophisticated attack by pro-Assad forces that wiped out their work. It was the ruthlessly efficient work of machine learning algorithms deployed by social networks, particularly YouTube and Facebook. And this is now another example of what is happening across the board in terms of algorithms, where without even human input, once the codes are written, information is disappearing from the internet, and it's what Orwell described as down the memory hole. And because information leads to perception, this constant and increasing algorithmic censorship to kind of mop up anything that you don't want people to see, and sometimes even some things you do want people to see by accident. I'm sure the establishment in America would have wanted anything attacking Assad to be seen. But algorithmic censorship is not a perfect tool. With taking down stuff you target, you can also take down stuff you've not targeted. But the principle is the same, that algorithms now are making information disappear on a monumental industrial scale. And more confirmation of the principle and the way this is going. Google favors stories from liberal news sites, study finds. And, you know, as I've said before, using the word liberal for the current progressive left is ridiculous. It's the least liberal politics you could imagine. But anyway, they call it liberal, wrongly. When it comes to political bias, Facebook and Twitter have become the most common punching bags, but a new study confirms that Google's search algorithms are also skewed in favor of what they call liberal viewpoints. Researchers from Northwestern University performed an algorithm audit of the Google Top Stories box, which is a major driver of traffic to news publishers and therefore prime online real estate. They examined results for nearly 200 searches relating to news events for 1 month in late 2017 and found a left-leaning ideological skew. The researchers did allow some leeway for Google to defend itself, however, saying that while the left-leaning bias was detected, it is possible that the dominance of particular sources is a result of successful strategic behavior by those sources to achieve algorithmic recognizability. But whatever the reason, liberal sources still far eclipse conservative ones. CNN, perhaps the outlet most reviled by conservatives, was Google's overall favorite source. Of the 6,302 articles appearing on Google's top stories during the month in focus, more than 10% came from CNN. The New York Times and Washington Post were up next, garnering 6.5 and 5.6% of the results, respectively. Fox News, the most right-wing of mainstream outlets, was the source of only 3% of stories appearing in the top box. Then it was back to liberal outlets, as it calls it, with the BBC, USA Today, Los Angeles Times, The Guardian, Politico, and ABC News filling out the rest of the top 10. Overall, 62.4% of the most common stories were left-leaning, while only 11% were said to be right-leaning. Now, again, people get caught in these bloody labels. It's not about left or right. It's about whether you're challenging the agenda or not, or whether you're supporting the agenda or not. And it is more likely, not in relation to Fox News, apart from people like its presenter Tucker Carlson, the rest of them, forget it basically. But it's not about Fox News and right or left or conservative or liberal. It's about whether you're challenging the agenda or not. And you get what would be called left-wing sources of information that are also being censored if they challenge the agenda. So it's simply the fact that the progressive, Soros-funded so-called left is the major vehicle for pushing this agenda. that they are not censored and are promoted. That's the reason why. It's not because they're left or right, but they're promoting the agenda. And in the same way, you get people on the right who are pushing the same agenda from a different point of view, and they're okay. But you challenge the agenda, and because of the way things have gone, it's many on what are called the right who are seeing through the conspiracy. That's why it seems to be that the right are being censored against the so-called left. But if you break it down, people censored on the left, people censored on the right, they are those that are challenging this agenda. And we need to put down these fault lines of left and right and center, and break it down to simple things like, are you telling the truth or are you selling a lie? Because if you're selling the lie, like CNN and BBC and all these people, then you won't get censored. If you're challenging the lie, well, you will. Another example, and it's very simple. If you want to pick out the key points of this agenda for humanity, just look at what you can't have another opinion about, and you'll see the agenda. And here's another one. Facebook punishes groups for questioning human impact on climate change, because climate change is a human-caused climate change. That hoax is a massive part of the agenda to justify the transformation of human society. So if you have another opinion on that, well, you're going to get censored. Facebook is now punishing groups on its platform that question the impact of human activity on climate change. The Facebook group God Emperor Trump, which, if they really mean that and they're not having a laugh, means they're kind of misguided themselves, received notification on Monday that members of their group had posted content that is rated false by the platform's chosen fact-checkers, like Soros-funded organizations and such like. Something that Big League Politics revealed the platform will use to demolish the group's frequency on the news feed, prevent potential new members from being shown the group, and otherwise reduce its engagement and growth. This is exactly what this disgusting organization Facebook do. Because, like I said earlier, they're just fronts for the Pentagon and the intelligence community. The content Facebook claimed was inaccurate was a video featuring the famous businessman and public speaker Dan Painter, who says that the extent of man's impact on climate change is overblown because the business world does not even acknowledge it as a fact. According to Pina, if the world was set to be submerged due to impacts of climate-caused global warming in as soon as 12 years, which is what people like this Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is ludicrously claiming, there would be no investment in coastal areas like Florida, which would certainly sink, and that climate change is highly cyclical, and it is naive to assume humans have such a large impact on the planet, all of which is basically and blatantly true. The article Facebook used to fact-check the claim hardly demolishes Pina's point, but rather says he may be inaccurate. At this point, Facebook not only requires that volunteer moderators determine the veracity of news, but also that they become well read on the intricacies of climate change and use this knowledge to police opinion and content. This campaign against so-called false news in groups that has been happening for some time and could easily be weaponized. It is being weaponized. If users were to gain access to partisan Facebook groups from the other side of the aisle, they could easily use this feature to post blatantly fake news in an effort to decrease engagement and reach those groups. The scale of this now is extraordinary, and it's happening so fast.